And we are back with more Road Gang Radio live on iHeart, YouTube, Spotify, and beyond. Jimmy and Lindsay, let's keep it rolling, shall we?
So, Lindsay, I got a chance actually to set up his bona fides as a background, the idea of the kind of journey to where he is now. I was telling you guys that Kyle Hester, along with actually, being from the city of New Orleans, by proxy of actually being born into the NFL, as it were, has now been working in the film industry for quite some time. He's worked with John Frankenheimer, Bruce Beresford, Mark Shelton, just to kind of throw a few names in there. He has been on both sides of the camera, including building the 1/3 scale sets for Team America.
Jim, so would you say he's been on both sides? All sides?
I would absolutely endorse that. And being the art department lead man on the TV show Wipeout, you guys got to keep an eye out for his first producing venture, Burden of Freedom. He will produce as well as play one of the lead characters. And his feature, Preacher 6, is in post-production now and should be released this winter. Made a friend. Want to get him on the show, get him out there, and let people know who he is. Kyle Hester, good morning.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. You guys are awesome.
Good morning. Well, and it's nice to meet you. Hi, Kyle. I am Lindsay. Looking forward to diving in this conversation. And I just want to start, Jim, because, the background, because he said it, and it's fascinating, obviously, your origin story, but your parents, you're saints to sinners, from New Orleans Saints to your time in the horror movie film industry. But I'm sort of obsessed with this balance with your dad was a New Orleans Saint, your mom was a cheerleader, so was I. Shout out, hey girl, hey. And then you grew up. All right. And then you grew up and, surrounding yourselves in horror films and the land of the spooky. So how do you go from, Friday Night Lights to haunted alleys? And what is the contrast there? Because my curiosity is, was it trying to do something so different from your All-American parents, or did it just naturally creativity? Was that in you from a little kid?
You know what's funny? That's a good question. I hadn't thought about how those two things transpired together. But you know what? It was like basically for me, it was just I was in junior high school, and then it was like, what do you want to do? Well, I don't know. I guess I'll be in the band, play band. And when I realized that, we didn't have any money. So when we realized that, buying a saxophone was like $800, and we're like, okay, well, I'm not doing that. So drama. So it was drama department, in the 7th grade, and I got the bug, and that was it. So, yeah, I ended up going to Performing Arts High School in Houston and Cal Arts, and so I've just been acting forever.
It's interesting too because my wife is now a master's graduate of Cal Arts, so there's a nice connection there as well too. It's funny too because you grew up at a time, and it's important people to remember this that. I've always said, I know, Lindsay, I'm going to bring this up, by the way, now. This is important to remember because it isn't until the Ronald Reagan tax cuts of the 80s that you begin to see football players making any sort of real money. I mean, people forget that baseball players up until the 70s, Lindsay, many of them had to take jobs in the offseason unless they were Ted Williams or Babe Ruth or somebody like that. And the old joke was...
I didn't know that.
There was a time in American history in the 1950s where if you sat in the first 3 rows of a baseball stadium over the dugouts, there was a good chance that your salary might be higher than almost every baseball player on the field. And the same applied to football for a long time. And so...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
I think my dad, he played 71 to 73. So this is in those times. I think he made like $27,000 a year. I think that was his salary back then. I mean, which was decent for back then, but I mean, it was not like it is today. We lived in, we had a little house in Metairie. He had a little house in Metairie. I was a little kid. So, yeah, but it was just like, not like, rolling dice and all that stuff. It's just like regular kind of thing, just like a middle income, kind of situation back then.
Well, and there wasn't the extent of kind of endorsements and things that we can do that are these days because of social media. Like these athletes are getting paid crazy money outside of their own contract just because they can sit online for days and talk about crap and make millions. So there was none of that either. So I do remember that because I grew up in Dallas and had a Dallas Cowboy that lived on our street. And listen, we weren't making that kind of money. And so, and I remember that him, them all having the side gigs, the side hustle, or so that's fascinating. Well, we're glad you got the bug and stepped into it, Kyle, and found your own creative life. But I love that. I love that balance of the all American. Not that you're a sinner, but I do like saying this. You're a saints to sinners kind of thing.
Oh, have you seen some of
With
his posts?
You know what? It works. It works. Yeah. It's funny. Back at when I was in 8th grade, it's like I played football in junior high, and I was tiny. I was like a little guy, and they wouldn't cut me because my dad played for the NFL. So I was like one of the smallest guys on the team, and I'm trying to do everything, and I'm just being crazy. But I was like I was the third string. I was like, well, I thought it was endearing that they kept me on the team.
Like, stop doing me favors.
I didn't have the size, So thankfully, I didn't have the size. So, I'm like 5'10" now, but maybe I could yeah. Anyway, those days are over.
Yeah, but that's a really interesting thing though. When those days are over, the idea that you figure out pretty quickly that maybe I don't want to get hit. I remember this, and I've talked about this on the show before, Lindsay. I actually tackled a future NFL player when I played high school, and played it with a good friend of Brad Bentley, and I were on the same team, and everybody said he made this great tackle. In regards to hindsight, I now realize I was a speed bump for a freight train. And I remember this guy hit me so hard, and he ended up on top of me. He basically tripped on me. And as he looked at me, he went, "Lucky," and got up and went back into the huddle. And I will remember that to my dying day. And at that moment, you realize, you know what, maybe I'm having fun out here, but this probably isn't the thing for me. You know what I'm saying? And that's a moment. I wanted to ask you something in regards to World Police, because you got a chance to work on those one-third scale sets for it. And I don't know if you know this, Lindsay, but in Escape from New York, a lot of the model building, a lot of the really kind of do-it-yourself special effects were done by a guy who had just gotten out of the trucking industry by the name of James Cameron, who had worked on that kind of stuff. And in many ways, your journey through the film industry resembles a lot of that 1970s stuff where you get these guys and these gals who are working on other people's bigger projects and getting a chance to get a film education by observing the world around you on set. Can you kind of talk about just having observed Frankenheimer, Beresford, Mark Shelton, the boys from South Park, as Stewie calls them, and looking at that and kind of tell us in regards to being, on the ground, what it is you learn from just as an observer doing your job on a daily basis in the film industry?
Well, it's interesting that you brought up Cameron, because one of my first art department jobs in Hollywood was on a 7-Up commercial, and it was the Skotek brothers who were the art department Academy Award winners from Aliens. So they did all the practical effects on the Aliens movies, and they went on to Titanic and stuff like that. And that's where I met Mark Shelton. And John Nolan, who was the makeup effects guy from Reanimator. Which we've been lifelong friends, since then. But so I started in practical effects, and miniatures and all that kind of stuff. So it was the 7-Up commercial was like a miniature city, and it was all these big, cardboard domes that were sprayed, painted silver, and so it's like this big silver city. And so they called kludging is when you take things that look like that, you would go to a grocery store and buy a bunch of chemical bottles or whatever, and you spray paint them and you put them and you make little windows, and all of a sudden you've got this huge building that's actually a bottle of bleach. So it's you take things that already exist and you make them something else. So that was just kind of opening my mind up to wow, okay, so anything is possible, if you can kind of have the imagination to make these things happen. So, but with Team America, we did all the third scale sets. So, and third scale means is a third the height of a normal thing. So Paris, all those, the cafe and all that stuff was built at like 2 foot high, so that the puppets would fit into, that area. And we did the Egypt, all the big car chase. We built like hundreds of tables of and we would have foam on the tables and build the landscape that would be like the desert, like, when the cars would race through the desert and stuff like that. So it was all like foam and paint and whatnot. So it was, yeah, you make the whole world. So that was a really cool, fun experience.
You get paid to be like a little boy's dream. It's like science experiments and blowing shit up. It's like, what could be better than that? Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And also I love that you dove into that a little bit, Kyle, because I always talk about how people sort of passively consume art, not sort of, very much so passively consume art, whether that be music or movies or whatever it may be, and don't think about what went into making the scene that you're talking about. Like there was a lot of people and a lot of money and time and creativity and thinking outside of the box to make it happen. So I love being able to explain it. And Kyle, the other thing, because you're on both sides of the camera, you're an actor, but you also produce, and you're also the creative piece, as you just described. So I talk about presence a lot. And how in the world are you able to, if you are, maybe the answer is no, but how do you find that you're able to stay in the moment creatively when you're producing, but you're also acting? Like, are you mid-scene thinking about lighting and wondering if craft services brought the jerky? Or like, how do you stay in the moment of acting when you're also on the, the creative and directorial side of the film?
That is a great question. And for the people who don't know, like basically, people throw around the word producer and like, hey, producer, and they just throw money at something. Well, actually, what a producer does is they are responsible for everything, every person that's hired, all of the departments. Like if it looks good, if it sounds good, it falls on the producer. The producer hires the director. So it's ultimately like a film vision is the producers. So, and they work with the directors to make those things happen. And I know a lot of people don't know that, but that's really the reality of it. So yeah, so when we were doing Preacher 6, and I played, one of the lead roles in it, and so I would have like, people come out, I'm about to go on, like we're at action, and then I had like, the lead, our guy, would have come over and ask me a question, or like to the little things of like, these couple of people are having an argument. Could you like, come over here and settle this? And it's like, so yes, you're wearing all the hats, and
you're like, let me get through this sex scene. One moment.
That's funny. We didn't have any sex scenes in Preacher 6, but yeah, it would be.
Well,
like
whose
that
fault
too.
is that? You should be writing more in, Kyle. It sounds like you're in charge of everything. If I heard, write some more. No, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding.
That is funny. Well.
My favorite joke, by the way, in regards to a producer, is how many producers does it take to screw in a light bulb, Kyle?
What's the punchline of that? It's like, I don't know. Which department is it? Yeah, I know.
I got it for you.
Yeah,
You ready? You ready? Here it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kyle, do we really need this light bulb? I need you to ask yourself long and hard before we do this. Do we really absolutely need this light bulb? There it is. There's the answer.
That's funny. That's funny.
There it is. And that's the thing, is the fact that, the difference between a line producer and somebody just smacking their name on something to give it a bona fides. We were talking about this the other day, Lindsay, that Francis Ford Coppola is the executive producer of the movie American Graffiti. But what he really is in that case is he simply put in his imprimatur so the studio would be comfortable with releasing it because they could put his name at the top of it, is a very different thing than the human beings, as Madison, our producer, can tell you too, is very different than the human being who has to worry about every single aspect of the movie, right down, as Lindsay pointed out, to the craft services. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, and I'm actually going to ask Lindsay the same question because she's worked in radio studios and with some really big names, is I was curious, as you're kind of going through this, I don't know if you're a journaler. Lindsay's very, very big on writing. She has her own show called We Should Write, which is every Wednesday, where we talk about the power of writing. But I was curious, as you're seeing people like Frankenheimer and Beresford and Shelton and working with Team America and working on Wipeout, if in fact you are taking notes in regards to the way of saying, this is my education. And I'm wondering if you were to give advice to a young filmmaker or a young actor or a young aspiring producer moving into this to say, every place you go, you need to make a point of taking notes of what you've learned on a daily basis, because you're getting an education that you can't get in a film school.
That is a lot. That is 100% right. So first of all, I didn't know that I was going to be a filmmaker. Basically, I just wanted to act. So it's like, how do I get into acting? How do I, put myself in front of the camera? So it's like, that was the passion that I still have. And so I ended up doing everything, so throughout my career, like I said, it's like I've done just about everything but run a camera, on a film set. So I ended up knowing how to do everything. So like what happened with The Chair is a horror movie with Roddy Piper. I came on as an actor, as one of the prison guards, and the producer, the creator of The Chair, lived on the East Coast, and I was here in Hollywood, and he was like, interviewing all these other producers, and everyone was like this A-type personality, and we're going to change the cast, and you got to change the script, and he's like, go F yourself, I'm not doing that. It's like, this is my cast. I've already got Roddy Piper and, Zach Galligan and, all these other people. So we're not doing that. And so he would ask me questions. Hey, Kyle, do you know where I can get this or whatever? And I knew the answers to his questions, when he would ask me, and he hated all these other producers that he was interviewing. And so he said, do you want to produce it? And I was like, what? Well, okay. So that was my first job producing. So, and I built the set.
Kyle, was it a little bit like, do you think you can do better? Go for it. Or was it like a genuine, would you like to take this role?
No, yeah, it was the second one. Yeah, it was a genuine,
okay.
Do you want to do this? Would you like to do this? And so, and I hadn't even considered it, like I should produce something, it was just like, I knew how to put things together, and so like I don't know if anyone has seen that movie, but it's built in, it's on a prison set, and we went to all kinds of different locations, like looking for actual physical prisons that we could shoot it in, and there was problems with either timing because of cast availability, or the sound was like a big echo chamber, and you just couldn't have dialogue in there because you have to shoot, do ADR to redo all the dialogue without the echo, so we went into all these places, and it's like none of these places worked, and they didn't know that I was a carpenter, so I said, okay, well, we got one choice because we're shooting in a month. So I said, I'll build the set. So then I built the prison set in my backyard for $3,500 of material.
Wow.
And yeah, so if you look up The Chair with Roddy Piper, I built that set, and that's how I got built.
Wow. And then also, because I'm curious, because you mentioned like the actors, because you've got some great names in there, that Zach Galligan and Naomi Grossman, Peter Murnick, and so it's this killer cast on Preacher 6, but and I saw that you had called it sort of your mental Rolodex of awesome. Is that something you said? Did I read that right?
That probably is something I said.
I wrote that down. I don't know if that's exactly what it was, something along that. But so I'm curious of that, because you guys did a crowdfunding situation for this, which we love to talk about on here. So how do you, in that moment, balance like artistic chemistry versus like practical crowdfunding recommendations when you're casting an indie horror film? Because it's like you want the names, but that seems like it's like artistically you want the right person, but also getting certain names to get people excited. Is that a hard line to walk?
Well, I mean, it's all about relationships. Like,
yeah,
all those people, like I had worked with Naomi Grossman on The Chair. So it's like I had that relationship, so I could, call her up and go, hey, do you want to play this role? We're doing a movie, we're crowdfunding a movie. And she said, yeah, call me agent. And I was like, all right, I got to talk to your agent. Okay, I'll talk to your agent.
I know. Isn't that annoying? Even when they're friends, you get the yes from them, and then you have to call, be like,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to do that with a couple of people, but most like Peter Murnick, he played Father Dan in it. He's so good. He was in Justified. He's 6'5". He's like super amazing presence. And we had worked together on Andersonville, and that's where I met him, as well as Carmen Argenziano. That's where I met Carmen. And so basically the Rolodex of awesome that I have in my head, like as an actor, I'm working with these people, through my career. And I'm like, if I ever had an opportunity to make a movie, you're in it and you're in it. And so I had these,
Gotcha.
Yeah, the Rolodex. Yeah. So that's how they ended up in the films. And so, yeah, but as far as like crowdfunding, that was its own thing. It's way different today. It's way more difficult now than it was when we crowdfunded for it, because it was like it had just come on, the Indiegogos and all those things were very popular, back then. So, yeah. But it is a all day, all night job to raise money like that. So.
It's interesting, by the way, we just had on Julian Simpson, who actually created the Lovecraft investigations for the BBC, and they wanted to do a 5th season of it, and the BBC was like, we're not interested in doing that, and they were able to raise, in regards to American dollars, about $200,000 in about 2 weeks to make that happen. I'm not saying that as a way of people can go out there and make that kind of money. It almost feels like now that Kickstarters and crowdfunding really work when you have an established product and a group of followers. And it goes back to, Lindsay talks about this all the time with Instagram, the idea that everybody has to take that deep sigh and say, okay, I got to get some loyal followers going on here, because at some point I may have to call upon these people to essentially buy advance tickets and advance merch with the promise that we'll make a product for them to kind of enjoy. And in that way, I wanted to ask you, would you ever think about doing a crowdfunding again to kind of make anything happen? Because, it is
100%. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like, it's one of the only ways the independent film gets made. It's like it's very difficult to make money, making movies in today's climate. But that is like, if people want to see independent film, then support those fundraisers, because that's how they get made, really. Because it's like unless you are, a Hulu or a Tubi, that's making their own movies, is going to put it on their own content and then also put it on the front page, then the indie films just kind of get buried. It's like, well, how do you get people to know about it? And to your point about getting lots of followers, then that is exactly what you do. So it's like you have to see yourself as a studio. So what would a studio do? Well, they have to have an audience. So, well, okay, they advertise. Well, I don't have money for advertising, so what am I going to do? Then that means I have to follow a ton of people. It's like each follow that you do on Blue Sky or Twitter or Instagram or whatever, it's like a handshake. Hi, I'm Kyle. I'm a filmmaker. And they go look at your page and go, yeah, well, okay, cool, I'll follow you. Or no, I'm not interested in movies. But you're not going to know until you follow somebody. So it's like that is the inorganic way of gaining a following, is just by following people.
So please follow, like and follow.
Yeah, exactly.
Kyle, I want to get your take on. Okay, so Jimmy, my host over there. He's a big horror film buff, as is his wife Claire. It's not been something that has spoken to me in the past, but you know what? Documentaries didn't used to speak to me, and now it's all I want to watch. So I think we sort of grow and evolve in our interests. But what I'm starting to think, perhaps, and I'd like your take on from a horror perspective, the thriller side, is that I wonder if it's actually secretly one of the most honest storytelling forms that there is. And maybe that's why it scares people in a different kind of way. Like it gets to say perhaps all the things other genres are too scared to. And I'd wonder if that resonates with you, because you're really creating this dark, gritty world in Preacher 6, the preacher turned vigilante. And I'm wondering if there's anything in the story there that feels personally you from a storytelling. There's redemption and fighting demons, etc. Do you think that is horror really trying to say these deeper things that sometimes we miss behind the blood and the guts?
Yeah, I think that that's a great question, and I think that horror gives you permission to delve into ideas of what's okay and what's not okay, and what really is the root of fear, and I think that,
Mm.
like, it's like in life you have things that you love to do and things that you're terrified of. So you have those two extremes, that kind of like balance your life, and where do you live, in it. And I think that everyone likes to experience a little bit of, like, what would I do if I was in this situation. So, like, in a horror
Yeah.
movie, it's the extreme of that. What would I do in this horrific, terrifying situation? So you get to experience the feelings and also answer questions, for your own self. So I think there's a lot there, but
Oh, yeah, I
but
love that. Great answer.
Uh,
That makes sense.
and
That makes me watch it. Would watch stuff with a different lens. With that, I would watch it in a completely different light, which is how I watch documentaries now. Like really trying to figure out what was going on with that person, whether it be a documentary or now a horror film. So I love that.
it's ironic too, guys, because it used to be with horror that you literally had to like either have the same slasher over and over and over again, this kind of Return of Freddy, Return of Jason, Return of Michael Myers, and on and on and on, and even with the Terrifier series. But the really cool thing is, Lindsay, is that people don't want to take a chance on big projects anymore. The one exception is horror movies, because you can do an original IP because people will show up if the promise in the marketing is that the shit will get scared out of you. If in fact it's
Yeah.
like, oh, will I watch a story about racism in the Deep South in in a different time? Are there vampires? Count me in. Will I watch a story about COVID at the beginning of COVID? Does it involve like Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal having a standoff in the middle of a southwestern town that involves like raging monsters who come from Antifa? Yeah, sign me up for that. That you can talk about big issues and do it in an original fashion if you promise people you'll actually make them crap their pants. And it leaves open the idea for original intellectual property in the way that everything else feels like sequels all the time. There's a really kind of cool thing. I think you're right, Lindsay. It allows you to explore, as Christopher Nolan said it best, the things that are concerning us right now. That you can actually talk about things that people normally wouldn't let you talk about. I don't know if you feel that way, Kyle.
I 100%. I think that, like, I could listen to you talk all day about that. That was brilliantly said.
Well, thank you.
So,
I'll be here
yeah.
actually on Monday through Friday. You can find me at 7 to 11. Thank you very
So
much.
if you liked that, please like and follow him, Kyle, and like us all. Speaking of that,
I
Kyle, what
already
is the
do.
what is the best way for people? We're out of time, unfortunately, but what is the best way for people to get involved with your projects and what you have going on?
Well, you can find me on Blue Sky. I'm also on Twitter, just Kyle Hester. You can search that name. I'll come up on either. And if you want to, I do have some spooky some horror type documentaries. If you go to the Fossum app and just like search my name on Fossum, all those documentaries will come up, like Haunted Lake Lanier and all that stuff. So
Ooh,
yeah,
Haunted
I
Lake
am out there.
Lanier.
And by the way, guys,
Yeah.
if you make your way over to his socials, a lot of the links are there. I mean, a lot of the stuff that you can watch. And I would really encourage, Lindsay loves to tell people, make sure you download, don't just listen. Guys, make sure that you rent these movies. I got a chance to do that on a couple of occasions. $2, $3 a lot of the time, sometimes less. You're helping an independent filmmaker get their message out, get their images out, get their worldview out, and that's really cool. Kyle, you're welcome back anytime, my friend. It was good to actually spend some time with you as a fellow New Orleanian. Who has now gone all points beyond. Thank you, brother. Welcome back anytime.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me on, both of you.